You know, Ian M. Banks' 1988 novel, The Player of Games, it's just one of those titans of science fiction. It paints this incredible picture of a far future utopian society called the culture. But here's the thing. Decades later, this book still sparks some seriously passionate debate. Is it this timeless, progressive vision, or has its idea of the future become, well, a relic of the past?
So let's really dive into that question. To get to the heart of this argument, we're going to look at two completely clashing modern takes. On one side, you've got this blistering 2020 review that finds the book deeply, deeply flawed. And on the other, you have the passionate fans who fired back, saying that critique completely misses the point of the whole book.
Okay, so first things first. To even begin to understand this debate, we have to get a grip on what the culture was supposed to be. This wasn't just another sci-fi empire. Nope, it was designed as a direct conversation with one of literature's oldest ideas, the Utopia.
And it's interesting, right? Our academic source material actually places this novel squarely in the utopian genre, a tradition that goes way, way back, even beyond ancient Greece. The whole idea is to show us a perfect society so we can take a hard look at our own. And let me tell you, Banks' vision of perfect was incredibly ambitious.
Now, the culture itself, this is where things get really fascinating. It's what's known as a post-scarcity society. Basically, think about it. No poverty, no money, you don't even have to work. Everything is run by these hyper-advanced, super benevolent AIs called minds, and they live in this perfect symbiosis with their human citizens.
I mean, the implications of this were just radical. In the culture, they've used genetic modification to get rid of disease and even racism. You can literally change your biological sex whenever you feel like it, which has pretty much wiped out gender discrimination. On paper, it really seems like Banks dreamed up a society that solved some of humanity's oldest, most painful problems.
Okay, but let's pivot for a second, because there's a really sharp counter-argument to all this. Back in 2020, a review on a blog called Black Forest Basilisks made the case that if you look at the novel through a modern lens, well, that perfect utopian surface starts to show some pretty serious cracks.
And wow, this quote, it really cuts right to the heart of the whole critique. The reviewer is basically saying that, for all its progressive talk, the novel just can't shake the biases of its time, and that it ends up telling a story that actually reinforces some old, very problematic ideas about power.
So the review doesn't just leave it at that. It breaks down its case into a few key points. It says the whole story is filtered through a male gaze, where the female characters are either treated like children, or if they're actually competent, they're somehow made less feminine. The main character, Gergely, gets called out for being, and I quote, concerningly creepy, and the whole thing is framed as a white male savior story.
And to really hammer the point home, the review points to some specific and honestly pretty visceral scenes from the book. For instance, there's this moment where the hero, Gergely, literally sniffs the spot on his couch where a naked woman was just sitting. This is held up as Exhibit A for the book's creepy male gaze and its failure to be truly post-gender.
But as you can probably guess, that was not the final word on the matter. Not by a long shot. That review set off a firestorm with longtime fans of the series, and they flooded the comments to challenge pretty much every single claim the reviewer made.
Right away, the first thing readers jumped on was just factual accuracy. For example, that central claim about a white male savior narrative. Readers immediately pointed out that the main character, Gergely, isn't even described as white in the book. For them, a basic mistake like that just called the whole review into question.
But this right here is where we get to the absolute core of the disagreement. The reviewer sees Gergely's flaws, his sexism, his creepiness, as the author's flaws. But the readers argue the complete opposite. They say, no, Gergely's old-school masculinity is the entire point. He's written as a kind of throwback, a comic foil, whose backward views are supposed to be made fun of, not celebrated.
So, who's right? The critic? The fans? Well, to find a way through this, our academic source suggests it's not really about picking a side, it's about context. You have to remember that every book is a product of its time, and The Player of Games was part of a huge, ongoing conversation in science fiction.
You gotta remember, when The Player of Games came out in 1988, sci-fi was just buzzing with these incredible new ideas. You had feminist sci-fi taking apart ideas about gender, you had cyberpunk exploring what it means to be human when you can blend with machines, and you had this new space opera movement flipping all the old colonialist stories on their head. Banks was writing right in the middle of all of this, playing with all these themes. All right, so where does that leave us? How do we possibly square these two completely opposite views? We've got the utopian promise on one hand, and this problematic reality on the other. Well, the key to bringing it all together might just be found in a brilliant comment someone left on that original review.
A commenter named Chrissa just nails it. They offer this really powerful middle ground. What they're saying is that Banks was a true visionary, someone willing to imagine a future that was radically different and push the boundaries of his day. But at the same time, he was still a person from his day, and maybe he couldn't completely shake off all of its blind spots.
So, you see, the big takeaway here isn't about stamping this book as good or bad. It's about what the whole debate teaches us. It shows that art is really a conversation between the time it was made and the time we're living in now. It's a great reminder that just because a character is flawed, it doesn't mean the author is endorsing those flaws. And yeah, it proves something can be both incredibly forward-thinking for its time and still have parts that make us uncomfortable today.
And all of this really leaves us with a much, much bigger question, doesn't it? One that goes way beyond just one old sci-fi novel. When we look back at the art of the past, how do we celebrate its vision while still being honest about its limitations? Now that's a game we're all still trying to figure out how to play.